Something is about to break in your life. You have prayed, you have waited, you have cried in silence, and heaven has heard you. But before God brings the overflow, He must first make sure you are not bound by what you desire. Wealth is coming, yes, but only to the heart that is free. Everything you have gone through was not to destroy you, it was to detach you, to prepare you for the weight of glory that is about to descend upon your life. Listen closely. The true mark of a strong spirit is not in how much it holds on, but in how freely it can let go. There comes a moment in every believer's life when God asks, can you release it? Can you release what you wanted so deeply, what you thought defined you, what you thought you could not live without? Because the moment you release it, heaven releases something greater. God cannot fill hands that are already full of fear, pride, or control. Do you know why many people stay stuck in the same place? Because they keep fighting for what God is trying to replace. They cry for promotion but refuse purification. They pray for new seasons but cling to old emotions. The Lord says today, detach, and I will deliver. Release, and I will raise you. Every time you detach from something temporary, you give heaven permission to entrust you with something eternal. Wealth is not just money. It is the manifestation of divine trust. God does not give wealth to impress you. He gives it to express His kingdom through you. And before He elevates you financially, He tests you emotionally. Can you be blessed without becoming boastful? Can you prosper without pride? Can you carry abundance without allowing abundance to carry you? That is why some of you have been through the wilderness, not because God was punishing you, but because He was proving you. He wanted to show you that your joy does not come from what you have, but from who you are in Him. The wilderness detaches you from dependence on things so you can depend only on God. When you emerge from that place, you are no longer shaken by loss, nor intoxicated by gain. You have become unmovable. And it is to such people stable, surrendered, detached, that heaven entrusts true wealth. Everything changes. When you understand this principle, you are not what you have, you are who you are becoming. When your emotions are no longer controlled by what enters or leaves your life, then you have entered spiritual maturity. The enemy cannot manipulate a detached heart. He cannot use money, relationships, or reputation to distract someone who is anchored in divine purpose. That is why the moment you master detachment, you step into divine dominion. There is a kind of peace that wealth can buy, not buy, a peace that flows from knowing that God owns everything, and yet He has chosen to share it with you. When you walk in that revelation, you become a steward, not a slave, a channel, not a container. You bless others freely because you are not afraid of running empty. You release because you know Dabin refills. You let go because you trust God to restore. And now, hear this in your spirit. Wealth is coming. Not the kind that fades, but the kind that fulfills purpose. God is about to elevate you not just in material things, but in mindset, in influence, in faith. But He must first complete the work within you. The detachment you are feeling is not rejection, it is preparation. The losses you endured were divine pruning, not punishment. Something greater is being positioned in your path. Lift your eyes. You are entering a new dimension of divine trust. Heaven is looking for those who can hold abundance without being held by it. God is about to elevate you because you have proven you can remain faithful in the low place. He is about to pour wealth into your hands because your heart has learned not to cling. The wind of change is blowing, and those who are detached will rise with it. Everything that once controlled you is losing its power. Fear is leaving. Doubt is leaving. Anxiety about the future is leaving, because your soul is anchored in God alone. When you reach that point where you can say, Lord, even if I lose it all, I still have you, that is when heaven opens. Abiyar and D says, now I can trust you with everything. Everything changes now. The detachment was never a loss. It was an unlocking. What you release will return multiplied. What you surrender, God will sanctify. What you lay down, He will lift up. Wealth is coming. Elevation is coming. The season of rebel ease is also the season of reward. Prepare your heart. You are stepping into divine elevation, not because you chased it, but because you were faithful enough to let go. Something is about to break in your life. You have prayed, you have waited, you have cried in silence, and heaven has heard you. But before God brings the overflow, He must first make sure you are not bound by what you desire. Wealth is coming, yes, but only to the heart that is free. Everything you have gone through was not to destroy you. It was to detach you, to prepare you for the weight of glory that is about to descend upon your life. God is not trying to take something away from you. He is trying to prepare you to hold what is greater. When you have learned to live without clutching at the things of this world, you become unstoppable. You cannot be broken by loss. You cannot be shaken by change. And you cannot be deceived by temporary gain. Detachment is not weakness, it is power. Because it means your identity no longer depends on what you possess. There comes a sacred moment when God tests your heart by what He asks you to release. Every dream, every relationship, every opportunity that has been shaken loose, Farba, Om. Your life is not a sign that heaven forgot you. It is proof that heaven is preparing to entrust you with something eternal. Many cry for the next level but are still chained to the old one. They ask God for new beginnings but they refuse to let old endings rest. Yet the Spirit of God whispers, Detach, and I will deliver. Release, and I will raise you. The Lord cannot elevate a person who clings to yesterday's blessings as if they are the only source of security. Detachment is faith in its purest form. Says God, even if I do not understand, I still trust your plan. Your strength, IBR, is not shown by how tightly you can hold on, but by how peacefully you can let go. The higher your calling, the greater your test of release. Abraham had to let go of Isaac in his heart before God returned him. Joseph had to let go of his reputation before God exalted him. Job had to lose everything before he realized that nothing can truly be taken from a man who is hidden in God. Every story of divine elevation begins with divine detachment. And when you finally stop fighting for what God is trying to replace, you create space for the miraculous. Heaven never multiplies what you refuse to surrender. Wealth is not only measured in gold, silver, or possessions. True wealth is divine trust. It is when heaven looks at your heart and says, this one will not be corrupted by blessing. That is why some have waited so long. God is not punishing them, He is protecting them from premature promotion. He must make sure your heart will not make an idol out of what He gives you. The waiting, the loss, the delay. They were not signs of God's absence. They were signs of His preparation. Because when He finally opens the door, He does not want you to serve the blessing. He wants you to serve Trobor, the blessing. Emotional detachment is not apathy, it is divine stability. It means that your joy, your peace, and your confidence are no longer chained to what people say or what life gives and takes away. When you are emotionally detached, the storms no longer dictate your mood. You are no longer a prisoner of reactions. You live from the inside out, anchored in divine peace. The enemy cannot manipulate a person who is unmoved by gain or loss. He cannot distract the one whose eyes are fixed on purpose. Everything you have lost is not the end. It is the beginning of a greater trust between you and God. Every tear that fell was a seed of faith. Every disappointment was a doorway to deeper revelation. You are not empty, you are being refined. God has been cutting away what could not carry the next level. The detachment you are feeling is not death, it is transformation. When you reach THPR at point where you can truly say, God, I want you more than what you can give me, that is when the heavens open. Wealth is coming, but it is coming to those who no longer chase it. Elevation is coming, but only to those whose hearts have been purified in surrender. God will never give you what will destroy you. He will wait until your spirit is unshakable before He releases abundance. And when that moment arrives, you will know it was never about the things, it was always about the trust. What you release will return multiplied. What you surrender will be sanctified. What you let go of will rise again, are renewed and glorified in His purpose. You are entering a season of divine reversal. The things that once held power over you are losing their grip. The worries that used to torment your heart are fading. You are no longer defined by your possessions, your past, or your position. You are defined by the purpose that lives within you. The Spirit of God is preparing to elevate you, not because you fought for it, but because you surrendered to it. Your detachment is your preparation, your release is your readiness, and your surrender is your signal. Heaven is responding. Wealth is coming, Burji. Everything changes now. Listen, beloved. When God begins to elevate a person, He does not start with their circumstances. He starts with their attachments. Before He raises you up, He checks what still holds you down. There are things that once brought you comfort, but now they bring you conflict because the Spirit of God is weaning you from dependence on anything less than Himself. Detachment is the divine process of purification. It is not the absence of love or desire. It is the transformation of both. It is learning to love deeply without clinging, to dream boldly without idolizing the DRBREM, and to walk through loss without losing yourself. When you learn this, your spirit rises to a level where peace no longer depends on possession and joy no longer requires validation. You become a vessel that heaven can trust, for nothing within you can be bribed, shaken, or corrupted. Do not FBR ear when God begins to remove things that once felt essential. Sometimes He must strip away what you thought was your foundation to reveal that your true foundation was always Him. The pruning you resist is the preparation you need. When God asks you to let go, it is never to leave you empty. It is TBRO, make room for the overflow. The branches that bear fruit are the very ones He prunes, not to punish them, but to increase their capacity. You see, many people ask for abundance, but their hearts are still cluttered. You cannot pour new oil into an old vessel. You cannot step into divine elevation while dragging the weight of emotional dependence, fear, or pride. The higher God takes you, the lighter you must travel. Detachment is the shedding of every unnecessary burden so your spirit can soar. There is a holy strength that is born in silence when you have nothing left to hold on to except God Himself. That is when faith matures. That is when you stop praying for relief and start praying for revelation. The fire of testing burns away the illusions of control. When you are stripped of every external assurance and you still find peace, that peace becomes your crown. That peace is what the enemy cannot counterfeit. It is the peace that says, even if the storm does not end, I will not be moved, because the one who commands the storm lives within me. When your peace is no longer tied to outcomes, then you have entered divine elevation. Because now, God can trust you with anything success, health, influence, knowing that none of these things can move you from your center. Emotional and spiritual detachment are the birthplaces of true dominion. Dominion does not mean control over others. It means mastery over self. It means your emotions no longer drive your faith, and your feeblings no longer dictate your obedience. There is a power that flows through a person who is no longer swayed by praise or criticism, gain or loss. When you are detached, you move in quiet authority. You do not need to prove yourself, because your validation comes from heaven. You do not need to chasper opportunities, because opportunities are drawn to peace. The calm spirit attracts divine favor. Heaven's treasures gravitate toward the soul that is steady, silent, and surrendered. Wealth is not only the abundance of things, it is the absence of fear. The truly wealthy are those who have mastered contentment. They are not owned by what they own. They can give freely, bless others, and sleep peacefully. They know that provision is not a season, it is a covenant. When your heart is detached, your hands can remain open, and open hands are hands God can fill again and again. That is why some of you have been in a season of loss. It was not a curse, it was a cleansing. God was removing the false securities so that when the real wealth arrives, you will no longer worship the gift, but the giver. Remember this, detachment is not rejection, it is realignment. Every time God shifts something out of your life, He is shifting you into position for something greater. What you thought you were losing was actually being replaced by what you were destined for. Trust that nothing surrendered to God is ever wasted. The seeds you buried in tears are about to rise as trees of testimony. The people Whoopi Paro walked away, made space for those who will walk with you. The doors that closed were never yours to begin with. Every disappointment, every delay, every detour was heaven rearranging your path toward divine elevation. When you look back, you will see that the moment you detached, everything began to accelerate. When you stopped chasing what left, God brought what was meant for you. The heart that is free becomes a magnet for destiny. The mind that is at peace becomes a gateway for divine ideas. The soul that is detached becomes the resting place of heaven's power. This is the paradox of the KBR kingdom. The more you let go, the more you receive, the more you release, the more you rise. So, do not fear what is fading. What is leaving your life now is only making space for what is eternal. The wilderness was only a classroom. The silence was only preparation. You are being elevated, refined, and readied. Wealth is coming, yes, but so is wisdom. Blessing is coming, but so is balance. Everything is aligning for your rise. And when it happens, you will know it was not your striving, but your surrender that brought you here. When God prepares to lift you, He often allows the ground beneath you to shake. The shaking is not to destroy you, but to detach you from what cannot go with you. Everything that is not anchored in divine purpose begins to fall away. And though your human heart may resist, your spirit begins to understand this is holy surgery. The pain of detachment is the evidence that transformation is taking place. God is cutting away dependence on what was temporary so that you can inherit what is eternal. Many confuse detachment with loss, but in truth, it is transition. It is the Spirit of God shifting your soul from ownership to stewardship, from anxiety to alignment bore. When He prunes you, it is not because He has taken His eyes off you, it is because His eyes are fixed on your destiny. Every great elevation begins with a divine separation. When God wanted to raise Abraham, He told him to leave his land, his relatives, and everything familiar. When He wanted to raise Joseph, He separated him from his family and his comfort. When He wanted to exalt David, He took him from the fields into the fire of warfare. God never promotes comfort, He promotes character. Detachment is the furnace where character is refined. You will know that you are being prepared for greatness when God begins to remove your crutches, when He makes you walk by faith, not by feeling. The hands that once reached for control must now rise in surrender. The heart that once depended on people must now depend on God alone. There is a moment when heaven watches to see if you can remain faithful without visible fruit, if you can remain peaceful without predictable outcomes. That moment determines your readiness for promotion. When you no longer panic in the unknown, you have entered divine maturity. Because faith without detachment is still dependence, it only shifts the object of true veracity from one thing to another. God desires to bring you to a place where your peace is not tied to possession, where your joy is not chained to outcomes, where your faith stands even when every visible support system has been stripped away. That is when you become dangerous to the enemy, because now nothing can move you. The Spirit of God says to someone today, the reason you have been losing things is not because you are cursed, but because you are being cleared for capacity. Heaven cannot fill a vessel that is already overflowing with attachments. You have prayed for overflow, but overflow on bar lie happens when emptiness meets divine fullness. The emptiness you feel is not abandonment, it is preparation. When God empties you, He is preparing to fill you with something you could never have imagined. Every loss has been an investment into your elevation. Every rejection was divine redirection. Every delay was a rearrangement of timing. You have not been forgotten, you have been refined. Emotional detachment is one of the highest forms of trust. It is when you can say, God, I will praise you whether you give or take away. I will bless you whether doors open or close. That kind of sorambarderes atmospheres. It tells heaven, this heart is ready. And when God sees that your joy no longer depends on outcomes, He releases outcomes that bring joy. You no longer chase blessings, they begin to chase you. Because heaven only releases wealth into hearts that can handle it. When your MBR oceans are steady, your blessings become stable. When your spirit is calm, your increase becomes continuous. So do not curse the shaking, celebrate it. It means you are being promoted. Every branch that bears fruit, He prunes. Every dream that is divine must survive the test of detachment. If what Ibor U lost could destroy your peace, it was never meant to go where you are going. You must understand this. The destiny God has for you cannot be carried with hands full of yesterday. Let go of what was, so you can embrace what is to come. Let go of people who cannot walk with your purpose. Let go of plans that limit your faith. Detachment is not the end of your story, it is the preface to abundance. Wealth is coming, but not just the wealth of things. It is the wealth of wisdom, the wealth of influence, the wealth of peace. It is the kind of wealth that flows through you, not just to you. And WHPRN it comes. It will not control you, because you have already died to control. The Lord is about to elevate you to a place where you will hold blessings with open hands. You will have them, but they will not have you. You will use them, but they will not use you. You will walk in abundance, yet remember ain't humble. You will experience overflow, yet remain anchored. This is what the Spirit is saying. Everything that was shaken is being realigned. Everything that seemed delayed was being designed. You were not being rejected, you were being redefined. And now, because you endured the detachment, you are qualified for the elevation. Heaven can trust you now. God can bless you without losing you. The very things you thought were leaving your life were only creating space for what He has prepared. The release was necessary for the reward. The emptiness was the evidence of expansion. Everything chabar enges from here. You will rise, not because you held on, but because you learned how to let go. There comes a time in the journey of faith when God brings you to the threshold of transformation, and He whispers, now, let go. This is the moment where destiny either unfolds or remains delayed. Detachment is not a lesson you learn, once it is a posture of life. Every new level requires a new letting go. The heart that refuses to release cannot receive. The Spirit of God is calling you to a place where you no longer live by reaction, but by revelation. When you detach, you step out of fear and step into flow. The weight of worry falls away, and suddenly you begin to see life not as something you must control, but as something you must cooperate with. That is where peace lives, the kind of peace that cannot be shaken by change, loss, or uncertainty. Every breakthrough begins with a breaking. EBR vary. Elevation begins with an emptying. You cannot be filled with heaven while clinging to earth. Many pray for divine increase, yet few are willing to endure divine detachment. The road to true blessing often travels through the valley of release. God cannot elevate the same heart that refuses to surrender. There are dreams you will only see after you have let go of the dream you built in your own strength. There are relationships God will send only after you release those that drained your spirit. There are resources waiting to flow only after you remove your hands from what was never meant to be controlled. When God asks for something, it is never to take, it is always to transform. The power of detachment is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming spiritually anchored. It is the sacred awareness that nothing external defines you anymore. You may have walked through season bar S, where everything that could be shaken was shaken. You lost what you thought you needed. You watched doors close. You felt abandoned, but in truth, God was revealing that He alone is your unshakable center. Once you have walked through that fire and still found peace, no storm can uproot you again. That is when heaven can finally trust you. You have passed the test of emotional maturity, the ability to bless God while bleeding, to stay calm while waiting, to stand still while the winds of change howl around you. There is a holy silence that fills the soul when you finally stop striving. Star bar iving ends when you realize that your purpose was never dependent on your performance, but on your posture before God. You stop chasing what was never meant for you, and you start attracting what aligns with your divine calling. You become magnetic to miracles, not because you demanded them, but because you use your peace made space for them. Detachment is not distance, it is depth. It is the realization that the more you release, the more room there is for grace to work. You no longer beg for answers. You become the answer in someone else's prayer, because your life becomes a living channel of divine FBR low. Wealth is coming, but it will not come to the anxious heart. It will come to the heart that has learned to rest. Rest is the highest form of faith. When your soul is at rest, heaven moves on your behalf. When you no longer fear loss, you qualify for increase. When you stop fighting to keep what God has already removed, you make space for what He intends to give. The Spirit of God is saying, I am about to trust you with abundance, not because you chased it, but because you proved I am enough. That is the greatest secret of divine elevation. When God becomes your portion, He can safely add everything else. You will not be seduced by success or wounded by rejection, because you have transcended both. You have become a steward of peace, not a prisoner of circumstance. Look around your life now. The things that once caused anxiety no longer carry the same weight. The people who walked bar A no longer leave you broken. The opportunities that slip through your hands no longer bring regret. Why? Because your identity is no longer anchored in them. That is what detachment produces, a quiet strength, a holy calm. The detachment you once feared has become the door to freedom. You are no longer trying to control the outcome, because you finally trust the one who controls everything. That is the place of true power, the place where heaven and earth meet in a surrendered soul. Everything changes when you see through the eyes of divine purpose. You realize that nothing was wasted. The LBRs were lessons. The waiting was wisdom. The pain was purification. God was never punishing you. He was positioning you. The very thing that broke your heart was also breaking the chains that held you. What looked like an ending was actually an entrance into a higher dimension of purpose. You are stepping into a season where you will live from overflow, not from effort. You will no longer chase, you will carry. You will no longer strive, you will shine. And the reason is simple. Your heart is now free. This is the season where the detached will be elevated. Those who no longer need validatio bar n will carry influence. Those who no longer fear lack will carry abundance. Those who no longer serve emotion will walk in authority. God is not just blessing your hands, He is anointing your spirit. Wealth is coming, influence is coming, peace is coming. But it will not overwhelm you, because you have been emptied of everything that could corrupt it. What you have surrendered has positioned you for what you are about to receive. Your detachment has become your destiny's doorway. And as you stand in this divine moment, heaven declares, you are ready. Rise, for everything changes now. Beloved, hear this truth deep in your spirit. Everything that has been shaken, stripped, or surrendered was never a sign of divine absence. It was proof of divine preparation. What you called loss was really God making room for what would last. You were never being broken, you were being built. Every tear was watering the ground of your next harvest. Every closed door was the hand of God redirecting you toward destiny. Now the season of detachment is ending, and the season of elevation has begun. You have passed the test of trust. You have learned that true strength is not found in holding on, but in letting go. And now, heaven can trust you with abundance, because your heart no longer worships what you have. It rests in who you are becoming. You are standing on holy ground between what was and what will be. The silence that once frightened you is now filled with peace. The waiting that once reigned you is now the womb of wisdom. The God who seemed hidden has been working behind every detail, aligning everything for your rise. This is not just another season, this is your shift. Wealth is coming, but not just material wealth, spiritual power, divine clarity, supernatural favor, and the CABRLM, authority of a heart anchored in God. So walk forward now, unafraid and unattached. Walk as one who knows that heaven's timing is never late, and heaven's promises never fail. Let go of yesterday with gratitude, embrace today with trust, and step into tomorrow with boldness. For the same God who asked you to release is the God who now commands increase. You have surrendered the temporary, and now the eternal is about to manifest. Everything that was lost will return, refined and multiplied. Everything that was delayed will arrive right on time. You are no longer waiting for breakthrough, Yober. You are the breakthrough. The power of peace now flows through you. The fragrance of favor surrounds you. And the doors that refused to open before are opening of their own accord. Heaven has found in you a heart that cannot be corrupted by blessing. So rise, child of God, for this is your hour. The wilderness has ended. The refining is complete. Wealth is coming. Elevation is here. Everything changes now.